Hi, everybody, and good evening from Finland. We're in the south here, and we've just experienced, well, I think, and you have too, a very powerful solstice, Christmas, and New Year's celebration. A deep pondering, a gratitude, a heartfelt union with humanity at the Christmas time, and then the projection ahead as we think about this important year, giving us just about 7 years and a couple of months, a few months before the great conclave. So, Olivia, Tuija, and I would like to welcome you to this next work with the Dissipation of Glamour group. Is actually we've had 60 programs, 60, and we're about to begin program number 61. And actually, I'd like to, I think it would be a benefit to us if we could act as if we were the glamour group, the observers of reality that Master Decay was training at that time, and really start from the beginning of the book and go right through it. Now, if we run into this, will take a few years. Um, if we run into something that we have already labored heavily over, we don't have to spend as much time on it. But there's so many little pieces of the book which are required of us. And as I began to think about that, I thought it might be a good thing to treat a number of the books in this way, as if we were having kind of an international study group, um, and work over and through these books in a methodical manner. These ideas come to me, and I have still to discuss with Tuija here what our overwhelming schedule is, but there's a possibility that we can do that with such important books as Esoteric Psychology 1 and 2. And of course, the Esoteric Astrology book, I've gone through that exhaustively, but maybe some people would like to do that. It's like an extended study group that has international implications. You know what I've been emphasizing in these last few years of the era of the Forerunner? I've been emphasizing the need to assimilate and apply as much of Master DK's teaching as may be possible, because he has, after all, promised us that from 2025 and onward, the third installment of these bridging treatises, as he calls them, will be offered to humanity. Now, that's just, amazing thought, and we try to stay alert about that because, let's just say that when Alice Bailey showed up with Master DK's presentation, the Theosophical Society, which was the first recipient of his attention, did not recognize what was coming. They didn't recognize what the Alice Bailey material was. Well, gradually, of course, the recognition came, and now there are many theosophists who do recognize exactly that. But maybe we will be sharper, more alert to see what may be the presentation, and we don't know in what manner it may come for the third installment. But the best way we can prepare for that is to assimilate deeply. If you've ever think, well, you've read enough in the blue books, well, think again, because as he said, I've given you more than you can ever absorb. Well, let's have just a little alignment here, and And then we'll start out. We actually have treated the beginning of the book before, but it is so profound, and it deals with issues that we absolutely have to know something about, that it certainly doesn't hurt to review them. I always review that section of the book. So here we are, however many that we may be, and we are in the various parts of the world, of course, but we think of ourselves as one unit of consciousness. And we think of ourselves, as it were, together in the same spiritual space, the same spiritual room, forming, as it were, one consciousness, receptive to the world of the soul and perhaps to even higher types of reception coming from the truly impersonal areas of the cosmic physical plane. Coming, as it were, from the cosmic ethers, where we get to understand a little bit how it is the planetary logos sees things. What goes on the cosmic ethers is not the result of our experience in strictly earthly life in the 18 lower subplanes and through the process of reincarnation. It's much more an extension of the life and consciousness of the planetary logos. In his many simultaneous incarnations as chain lords and as globe lords, all of that, the complex structure of the planet, but it's all the great logos acting out its plan. So our work is to look out onto the astral plane, where there are so many forms that attract people and masquerade as truth, are very convincing, but are basically erroneous. And we have to bring in the light so that those attractive forms can be dissipated, scattered, and no longer contaminate this important level where so many human beings live, this level of attraction and repulsion, this level from which the desires emanate. We want to utilize those desires which actually lead somewhere in terms of the divine plan, and not be misled, following will-o'-the-wisps into the swamp, thinking that false light goes somewhere. It doesn't. It just leads to entrapment, enthrallment, you might say. was to show you how far things have come. In the negative sense, we often say to a person, "You look so glamorous. You look enthralling." Well, those are all signs of captivity. We don't want that. We want to be free of that. And so we use the occult methods given by Master DK, and we work persistently, carefully, protecting ourselves. It is dangerous work. So that we can clear out the astral plane and drive the evil back and back and back until it has to leave entirely the 18 lower subplanes eventually, and it will. We'll just sound one Om as we declare our intention to work together under the instruction of hierarchy and for the benefit of humanity. Okay, this is the new document. This new document really contains the whole book. And I go in beforehand and I try to fill in the italics where they belong. But today we'll begin with something called certain preliminary clarifications. You know that Master DK organized his students into groups. They were groups of 9. They were people who, I guess it started around 1931. They were people who had been with him in previous incarnations. Some of them were his students or family members, or, they were karmically related to him. The applications would come into the arcane school, and he would tell Alice Bailey to set certain people aside, and they would be invited to participate in these groups of 9. Well, that experiment never did get completed, but remember what he did say, that the seed group project is a 275-year project. So if you think about it, we're not even 100 years into it. And I think when Master DK externalizes, and I do think he will be one of the externalizing masters, that this seed group project will be carried forward as it is meant to be. Right now we're sustaining the bridge, you might say, and building up the magnetism, and we do see that there have been some tremendous responses in the world along the lines of healing and telepathy and changes in education and in the new the religious quest has had some enlightened guides appearing where you might not expect them to appear. There have been advances, but to work on the specifically occult advances, it will probably require the presence of Master DK, or at least his contact with certain people. Maybe he'll reorganize some of these groups when he again begins to work through an amanuensis. I sometimes joke that, he's going to use a computer and one of those voice recognition software, Dragon of Wisdom, dragon, dragon of wisdom, naturally speaking. We don't know how he's going to work, but we do know that by 2025, there will be enough clearing of the air on this planet so that he can again begin to work. Our problem, in World War I, he couldn't start while the war was raging, but he did start in 1919, 1 year after the armistice had occurred. And whatever clearing we all have to do, and I'm sure there's plenty to do, it has to be done by 2025 so he and others in their own peculiar tasks so that they all can begin to work. As a result of the great hierarchical conclave, it will be a tremendous thrust forward. I think page 530 of Externalization of the Hierarchy, tells us that the first steps in the real externalization will be occurring. And the John the Baptist period in which we are now involved, we are the group John the Baptist, the new group of world servers is that will be coming to an end. We'll have to see whether we retain our heads or not. You know the story of John the Baptist, but we'll work as hard as we can towards 2025 and a great conclave and a whole new phase of unfoldment in the externalization process will be occurring. So as we read along here for a little bit, just sort of make notes about what you might want to discuss or comments that you have or questions that you have, and we will then try to look at those a little bit. So there was an introduction by Foster Bailey, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm just going to start where the Tibetan starts, where he talks about certain preliminary clarifications. All groups involved in esoteric work have their own dharma or duty and have their own peculiar objective. First the dissipation of karma, and then you're free to fulfill the dharma. And often in fulfilling the dharma, much karma is worked off. Okay, spelling is a good thing to have. Okay, there we go. In order that you may clearly vision what you as aspirants to discipleship, now that's how he was rating these people. They certainly, all of them had taken the first initiation except for one, but they were aspirants to true discipleship. And in discussions with some people who are pretty good at this, they've thought about accepted discipleship as the beginning of true discipleship. Everything else is probationary. There's different ways to look at this, but he calls these people aspirants to discipleship, and maybe it's not so bad for us to consider ourselves to be similar. It's quite a heavy thing to be a real disciple, and we have to see whether we measure up. So in order that you may clearly vision what you as aspirants to discipleship have to do, and so intelligently cooperate, I shall concisely state the purpose. Dharma means duty or obligation, and it is your definite and specific obligation to develop the intuition. Well, we know from the maps where this is found. We call this fourth cosmic subplane the intuitional plane. We call it the Buddhic plane. But interestingly, the faculty of true intuition is not found until we reach the four of the four. Let's see if I can get here to a place that shows that. Some of you are familiar with this idea, but here is intuition on the Buddhic plane, and it's on the fourth level, preceded by, a higher correspondence to hearing, and a higher correspondence to touch, and a higher correspondence to vision, and then comes this intuition, which is it's a very center, you might say, of the entire cosmic physical plane. Now let's see if I can get back to where I need to go. Okay. So this group, this second group, this observers of reality, had a specific task in developing the intuition. Now, the intuition is useful in the dispelling of glamour, but of course the sharp mind has to come first. The lighted, soul-infused reasoning mind comes before the intuition, and the intuition is particularly useful in the dispelling of illusion. But we might say that if it doesn't exacerbate the glamour, well, let's see, sometimes soul energy can exacerbate the glamour, unless our mind is very, very sharp. At least it can be useful in relation to the astral body. And so many people have this sort of astral Buddhic connection. We actually live in an astral Buddhic solar system. It's a largely Devic solar system. The number of units in our solar system are more Devic than they are human. In this particular solar system, what does it say? 140 billion Deva units and only 60 billion human units. So that, I think, is very interesting and connects us with the importance of the 2-4-6 line and the intuition. The means or methods whereby the development is brought about can be the study of symbols. And this particular group did study the symbols. We had a group earlier on, some 20 or more years ago, which studied those particular symbols. They were most interesting. But we don't have Master DK to supervise us in this at this time. We are told by physicians and scientists that thousands of cells in the human brain are still dormant, and consequently that the average human being only uses a small part of his equipment. Well, this has become a truism, and it was an interesting movie. I forget, it had Scarlett Johansson in it, and I'm forgetting the name of the movie, but it was about utilizing everything. And by the time the movie was over, she just simply disappeared into the vastness. But anyway, there's always more of the brain that can be activated. This we know, and even the brain cells that are activated are rather sluggish in terms of, or when compared with the kind of delicate impression which must be made upon them. The area of the brain which is found around the pineal gland is that which is connected with the intuition. And when you read your white magic rules, you will see that this is the place where land and air and water meet. Let's see if I can find that particular rule, and you'll see what I mean. Here's a treatise on white magic, and I think it's number 8. The Agni-Surians respond to the sound, the waters ebb and flow. Let the magician guard himself from drowning at the point where land and water meet. Now that's the solar plexus. The midway spot, which is neither dry nor wet, must provide the standing place whereon his feet are set. Now here comes the major statement that I'm talking about. And notice that it's a adverb that relates to time and not so much to place. When water, land, and air meet, there is the place for magic to be wrought. When water, land, and air meet, there is the place for magic to be wrought. And that is the etheric area around the pineal gland. So these two things are related. So the area of the brain which is found around the pineal gland is that connected with the intuition. And we do want to bring through in the white magical process that which the intuition of the soul confers upon us as necessary in terms of the divine plan. Okay, and it is these cells which must be roused into activity before there can be any real intuitive perception, which, when aroused, will manifest soul control, spiritual illumination, psychological understanding of one's fellow men, and the development of the true esoteric sense, the seventh sense, intuition really, which is the objective before you at this time. So he's mentioned some of the things he's going to deal with: soul control, spiritual illumination, true psychological understanding of one's fellow men, which is also based on love, and a development of the true esoteric sense. Now, all of us, I'm sure, could go far in the development of these factors. And just a little bit later, he'll deal with them. I would like to divide what I have to say into three parts, and I plead, plead. That's unlike him, but okay. Every once in a while, he does say that. He begs and he pleads because it's really important. And, sometimes people treated what he said too lightly and did not follow through. I plead for a close study of my words. And he always said that we study his words too superficially. So we have to have a new attitude towards that kind of study. Okay, I seek to define for you the intuition. I shall deal with its mode of development through the study of symbology. Really, to the person who's used to spiritual reading, everything is a symbol. Everything that you can perceive with your eyes or hear or touch, but especially through the eye, is a symbol. A curtain, a cup, a light, a flower. All of them are symbols or connect with higher archetypes, which they, in some sort of fairly crude way, represent. And I shall close, he says, by giving some specific instructions as to a useful mode of procedure. So we are, acting as if we are in Master DK's glamour group, observers of reality. You think about what does it take to observe reality? Well, a very strong ajna center and a lot of the fifth ray, which we can all cultivate, and plenty of the realistic planet Saturn. We want to register things as they are, not as we imagine them to be, not as we wish they could be. And you can see the danger of the planet Neptune in some of its lower possibilities, some of its lower suggestibilities for throwing us off the track, giving us what we wish, giving us what we hope, giving us what we imagine. That's not reality. So in a certain respect, Saturn and Neptune stand opposed to each other. Although Neptune gives wonderful things, of course, but not that hard fifth ray look at things. Should you therefore find these articles hard to understand and your reaction slow, you must bear in mind that this indicates your need for this study and corroborates what I am telling you. Okay, I'm sure that there's none of us here that is so presumptuous as to think that we do not need this kind of study. If you will seriously consider with me what the intuition is not, I think my words will find in you an inner response. And so often, isn't that the case, that when we dichotomize and we learn what a thing is not, and perhaps we had assumed that it was. When we learn what it really is not, we come closer to being able to define what it is. So working with the opposite of a thing you wish to define can be very useful. All right. Remember the Ajna Center, how strong it is. Now, some of you are familiar with these paragraphs. And like I say, I personally always return to them for a reminder, because he's taking away many things that we thought these terms were, like intuition, illumination, understanding, love. Those are the terms he's going to deal with, and we have certain conceptions of what they are. Well, he begins almost immediately getting rid of those conceptions, and then we have to stretch our understanding. So here we go. The intuition is not a welling forth of love to people, and therefore an understanding of them. Of course, that's good. Welling forth of love and understanding is good, but there's something more. Okay. And I'm sure, we're familiar with the idea that, I'll put it this way, that true love aids in the understanding of people. This is true. If it doesn't blind us, of course, the opposite is true, but then maybe it's not true love. It's the love of the soul, the essence of another, which aids us in understanding them. And if we're particularly fascinated by some aspect of their personality, that will be a blind against really understanding the inner person. Much that is called the intuition is recognition of similarities and the possession of a clear analytical mind. You've had some experience with people, and you can recognize people who display similar qualities, and you learn how to read people in a way. Well, that's good too, but it's not the intuition. Intelligent people, he says, who have lived in the world for some time and who have experienced much and who have contacted many other people can usually sum up with facility the problems and dispositions of others, provided they are interested in doing so. Okay. Well, as an astrologer, a psychologist, a health professional, physician, whatever, we want to know people, and because it will give us the hint as to where the inharmony or disharmony can be found, and then we will be able to assist them. So we meet many, many people, don't we? And the more people we meet and the deeper the association with them, the more this facility of understanding their character comes in. I suppose if you're trained as an actor, over the course of your life, you will understand many different types of people, and you'll understand that the seeds of who they are in yourself as well. So there's a similarity between what they are and actually what you are, and the actor brings that out. That's why the profession of actor, of dramatist, is so important, to reveal the depth and complexity of human nature and help us know our fellow human beings better. But he's going through this, not that, here for us. So we can judge, how well we know human nature. This they must not, however, confound with the intuition. A clear analytical mind and much experience with human nature. This is what it is. A clear analytical and much experience with human nature, allows us to understand the character of our fellow human beings. And I certainly, if I were going to an astrologer, I would want the astrologer to be equipped with this kind of capacity, or to a medical intuitive, or to anybody that was trying to help me see more deeply into my problems that are manifesting in the personality. Now, this is quite a statement here, and many will disagree. The intuition has no relation to psychism, either higher or lower. Now, that's a bold statement, and sometimes to higher psychism, well, psychism seems to have something to do with form per se, and I think he's going to tell us that the intuition is relatively, on the cosmic physical plane, formless. So this is a bold statement, and it's something that many psychics can chew on for a long time, because it's so difficult to give up that kind of sensitivity, which was prominent with us all during the Atlantean period. I guess we were all psychics of a certain kind, and I guess we all could travel out of the body on the astral plane, and all of those things were developed in those days and can be reused once there is a higher perspective. The seeing of a vision, the hearing of the voice of the silence, which is important, all this is important, a pleased reaction to teaching of any kind does not infer the functioning of the intuition. Master DK has been through all this, so he can speak from experience about the many things that mislead us into thinking the intuition is active. It is not only the seeing of symbols, for that is a special sort of perception, and the capacity to tune in on the universal mind, upon that layer of its activity which produces the pattern forms on which all etheric bodies are based. So it is not only the seeing of symbols. And many people think that if they see the symbols, the intuition is active. It's a different capacity altogether. It is not. I find this so useful. You know how it is when the neti, not this, not that. It's so useful in detaching us from what we have thought reality was. If you get drastic enough with this, not that approach, you're going to find yourself in the formless realms and on the level of being. But I don't know how far he's carrying this, so let's just see. It is not intelligent psychology and a loving desire to help, all of which are important. Okay, he's not saying they're not. That emanates from the interplay of a personality governed by a strong soul orientation and the group conscious soul. All right, he's giving us the source of these other desirable factors. Now, here comes a definition. Intuition is the synthetic understanding which is the prerogative of the soul, and that only becomes possible when the soul, on its own level, is reaching in two directions, towards the monad and towards the integrated and perhaps, even if only temporarily, coordinated and at one personality. It is the first indication of a deeply subjective unification which will find its consummation at the third initiation. And I would even say, yes, there's a great integration at the third initiation, but what is truly the intuition continues. And in another way, the third initiation is a starting point, because it's only then that the soul really begins to reach towards that state of being we call the monad. Now, I'm going to read that again because it's really so very important. Intuition is the synthetic understanding, which is the prerogative of the soul. And it only becomes possible when the soul, on its own level, and that would mean that we are really focused within the causal body, which is one of the major objectives of meditation. The soul on its own level is reaching in two directions. This is the human soul abstracted into the higher mental plane, into the causal body, into the egoic lotus, towards the monad and towards the integrated and perhaps even, if only temporarily, coordinated and at one personality, because our coordination with the soul and as the soul, as a personality, is at our stage of development a very variable matter. It is the first indication of a deeply subjective unification, which will find its consummation at the third initiation. Well, some kind of integration, on the lighted way of integration, to quote one of the lesson sets that the Arcane School uses. A major integration does occur at the third initiation, but it's just the beginning. And of course, for whatever intuition we might find here, if I were to go back to our little map here that we so often use, whatever intuition we might find, let's say, within the soul itself, within, let's say, the second of the synthesis petals, or within the intuitional Buddhic plane, these are only lower correspondences of much higher areas of intuition, which are found on the cosmic Buddhic plane and beyond. So we're just getting started in this comprehensive grasp of things. So he goes on that intuition is a comprehensive grip of the principle of universality, and when it is functioning, there is momentarily at least a complete loss of the sense of separateness. Now, this is really an important one. So all this work that we do in the, the identify as being group, it is meant in a way to cultivate that synthetic grip, this sense of universality, and the overcoming through identification of any sense of separateness. Now, the mind automatically, if that's where we're focused, is seeing everything in an illusory kind of separateness. And I guess at the stage we are, we have to work to preserve this sense of non-separateness. But if you think about universality, the Aquarian energy is the energy of universality, we are told many times. And so it is quite possible, quite probable, that during the Aquarian age, this comprehensive grip of the principle of universality will be cultivated, and we shall be emerging from the Aquarian age with a much finer, a more comprehensive, deeper sense of non-separativeness, and therefore the intuition will be far more active than it had been when we entered. I suspect that'll happen a lot in the second 720 years of the Aquarian age, which lasts, according to one type of measure, 2,160 years. We're not talking about overlaps here. 2,160 divided by 3, and you've got that 720. And that's the period of Mercury. And Mercury is the ruler of the human hierarchy of monads, and it's the ruler of the Buddhic plane in a very important way as far as humanity is concerned. So it's not just the mental Mercury that we'll be dealing with, but the transcendental mind, as it is called, of Mercury. Now let's go on a little bit because it enlarges even more. It's very beautiful. So anyway, the comprehensive grip of the principle of universality, and momentarily at least, there's a complete loss of the sense of separateness. Now, at its highest point, it is known as universal love. Well, that's an amazing statement, and it reminds us of very high love of the planetary soul, or even solar logoic love, because, you know, the word universal, as I've often said, doesn't necessarily mean the grand entirety of all galaxies and starry systems. It tends to refer also to our little solar system. Universality is some kind of vision that is granted within our solar system from a solar logoic perspective, and the higher initiations will give us this. It is known as universal love, which has no relation to sentiment, you know, that's the mixture of feeling and thought together, or to affectional reaction, but is predominantly, and here it is, predominantly in the nature of identification with all beings. That's why in our little group, you know, that I hope we can meet, you know, sometimes in a webinar, you know, and not just over the script and with words. It's in the nature of identification with all beings. That identify as being is very important. Then is true compassion known. Then does criticism become impossible. Maybe analysis, but not criticism, right? Because DK is always saying, let me analyze this for you, okay? Then only is the divine germ, and that would be, I suppose, the monad itself, the seed of the spirit, then only is the divine germ seen as latent in all forms. Let's call it the germ of pure being. Okay, germ of pure being, which is the essential monad. And okay, obviously I'm not going to go on much beyond this. Intuition is light itself, and when it is functioning, the world is seen as light, and the light bodies of all forms become gradually apparent. Well, you know, matter is light, light is matter, and there are all these different grades of matter and therefore of light, and the subtle worlds begin to open up to us once the intuition is really inherent within us and expressing. This brings with it the ability to contact the light center in all forms, which obviously Master DK can do because that's how he works. And thus again, an essential relationship is established, and the sense of superiority and separateness recedes into the background. So if we find, you know, the disciple with the critical mind and lording it over others and acting somehow from the seat of the superior person, we will just know that the intuition is not really activated. Intuition, therefore, brings with it the appearance of three qualities, and these we will deal with when we resume our work 7 days from now. So this is the end of the doggy reading for number 61, and this took place on 5 of January 18, and the next will be the beginning of number 62, and that will be on the, I assume, the 12th, if I can add properly. All right, so, you know, amazing words clarifying for us our misconceptions. You know, we always are using the word intuition. Oh, I had an intuition about this or that or whatever. And DK tells us to discriminate between a psychic hunch, which may be accurate, and the true intuition, which is this great universal love, the grip of the principle of universality, non-separativeness, synthetic understanding. Okay, all these things, these words, but they have to mean something to us in our own experience. Okay, all right, friends. So I know I went on a little bit there, but now if you have some thoughts about this or some questions, then this would be the time, and Brett will give me a hand here if I miss anybody. Okay. Okay, Yvonne, I'm not sure what you meant by that, by Lucy, but Lucy is of the light, so it's a good name. All right, maybe Brett or one of our... Okay, so Yvonne, there you go. You're on.
It was the movie you were thinking about where she was infected with a chemical.
Chemical. It was chemical.
Brain function.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. It was a good movie, and you know, rather exciting. And I'm not sure that we can do it with a pill and get 100% of the brains functioning, or we might just fall apart or disappear the way she did. But it shows us that some amazing possibilities do lie ahead. Thanks, Yvonne, on that. Appreciate that. It's an interesting movie if you haven't seen it, and quite exciting and quite metaphysical, quite occult. I think you might enjoy it. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you. All right, friends, your thoughts? Okay, hold on. I see hands, and okay, there we have Denise. Okay, you're self-muted, Denise, so if you can unmute yourself, you can speak. You know, it's one of those, I think it's a little microphone you have to hit to make sure you're not on self-mute if you want to speak. Okay. There you go.
It might have been an accident. I think it was an accident.
You're good. You're good now. Okay.
I didn't have a question. Thank you.
Okay.
Loose fingers.
Oh, okay, I'll tell you what. Your soul was raising its hand. All righty. Thank you. Okay. All right, friends. What do we want to say? What do we think? I love this section. You know, it always brings me back to basics, and it always, for me, it emphasizes this principle of universality and of identification, you know, which I somehow in this life dearly love, you know, and try to understand and try to enter. It's been the great quest in my life. So when I come back to these pages, it really reminds me of home, I must say. Okay, so just feel free to ask what you might like, or make a written comment if you like. You know, look, we're all students here, every one of us, and we're trying to equip ourselves to be useful members of the hierarchy, you know, one fine day. Okay, Brett, is there someone here? Okay, Vera.
Rose and Vera have their hands up.
Okay, so I've got Vera here, and who? Yeah, Vera and Rose. Okay, so Vera, I got you first, and there you go. Okay, Vera.
I would like to get some clarification between the abstract mind and solar mind. There are those three minds, yeah, logical mind, lower mind, solar mind, and abstract mind. If you can shed more light on that, please.
So you know, looking here at the, be nice to be able to do, right? All right. I have, here is a picture, in a way, the concrete mind can be ruled by Saturn, by a lower form of Mercury, and by Mars and by Pluto, and deals with what we generally perceive to be the relationships between concrete objects and their rational causative connections. But the next thing we do is we move into what I call the sun of mind, or DK calls it that, and I call it unitive mind. And it's ruled in a general way by Venus, and it is related to the third subplane of the mental plane, and especially to the second subplane of the mental plane. And there begins to be a realization that the many factors that are apparently related in a causal manner are also related through identity. And it's a type of mind that is somehow able to perceive the whole, the unity that exists between things. It's the beginning of the overcoming of separateness in mental perception. That's how I understand it. You see, in a way, the entire three subplanes of the mental plane are ruled by Venus, the higher three, and the lower four are actually ruled by Mars. Venus must always conquer Mars in this respect. Venus is unitive, and Mars slices and dices and is separative, a non-sacred planet, which is one of them that's responsible for the false impression of separation. So it's unitive mind, and it's also the beginning of the ability to contemplate, where you begin to feel that the subject and the object are not separate from each other, but are not only related to each other, but begin to be the same thing. So I call it contemplative mind. It's Libran, it's Venusian, and it involves the two lower subplanes, but especially the second. When we get to the abstract mind, we have entered the realm of the spiritual triad, which is no longer particularly about our experience. It is a reflection of how God, the planetary logos, sees things, and the great planetary designs which must be fulfilled, and in which everything is related to everything else in a causal manner, and in a manner that moves towards manifestation, can be seen. So the true formulas, I'll say it this way, the formulas which lie behind manifestation begin to be grasped by the abstract mind, and the truly big thoughts, which are inclusive of all kinds of particulars, begin to be seen. In other words, it's the place where generality is generated and includes many categories of particulars in the concrete realm. So it is like the blueprint of what is to materialize using all of the concretions in the world of the 18 lower subplanes, starting with the concrete mind. So that's, a little bit of how I see that. And of course, I call it planetary mind sometimes, because it expands over the entire planet. And when we can really build the Antikarana, we really begin to see where all manner of things fit and how they are related to each other in a causal and planetary manner. And let's just say one little formula can contain 10 million specifics. So it's a mind of condensation, where a particular formula lies at the root of many kinds of outpicturings in concrete form on the level of the concrete mind. I hope that's a little helpful. That is my impression. Yeah.
So can we say that a lot of abstract thoughts are in the blue books?
Yes, and not intuitions. The abstract thoughts are to lead you to the intuitions, which is a direct perception of truth, called straight knowledge and pure reason. Abstract thoughts are the next level down from pure apprehended truth, where the exact pattern of the archetype is seen. Abstract thoughts try to represent the archetype in some manner, but it's still subject to time and space, because notice it's in the dense physical body of the solar logos, the lower 21 subplanes. Once we reach the intuitional plane, then time is beginning to change, and we no longer are bound by sequence. We get things all at once. We see them exactly as we are in the perfected reflection of the archetypal arrangement which exists on the monadic and logoic planes.
Oh, thank you, because I just now realized that I was mixing the solar mind or sun of mind and intuition. And that's why
it's not bad. It's not bad, because there is a reflection. There is a reflection in this unification, seeing things as they begin to unify with each other. That is a reflection of the intuition. So there is, there is the intuition of the soul, but there is the purer intuition of the cosmic ethers, where it's the experience of the logos we're entering and not our own earthly experience. So there is a connection. You're correct on that, but it's not the full thing.
Oh, thank you very much.
You bet, Vera, you bet. Okay, so I think Rose had something here. Go ahead, Rose.
Your previous discussion there reminds me of the quote. DK says that in all of the writings of his books, they were written in such a way to direct your mind along certain thoughts in certain directions in order to invoke the intuition, for that is where you will get the true direct knowledge or the true understanding, that it's not the words, but they're the pointer to the direction. Also, Vera's question kind of led into what my comment was going to be about synthesis. And telepathy. In telepathy book, he explains how everything is united in this energetic world, that the very substance of matter itself is basically one, and it's a part of even the whole cosmos, and it's part of what creates this where there is no separation, and we have the illusion of separation. And when in that synthesis, I think that is a huge step for humanity to go in that recognition, and along science, it is making massive progress. And I had a strange dream last night about the animal kingdom, and that the suffering that the human kingdom inflicts upon the animal kingdom is somehow related to the suffering going on right now in the human kingdom, that nothing is separate, that it's all all the kingdoms, all the natures are all a part of this synthetic whole, and a lot of glamour and illusion, is the lack of recognition of that synthesis. And I know there's so many levels of synthesis, and this is a very basic, mundane level, but it still reflects these higher levels. And that's all my comment was.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Numerous levels of synthesis. We are on a plane which is hardly even a principle to these greater lives, and yet for us, it's something that is opening vistas that we've never conceived before. So this sense of the synthesis, or of the one in the many and the many in the one, continues to deepen and intensify. And I think that's what Master DK, part of what he means when he says that the group onward moves in life. The group onward moves in life. It's not just a question of consciousness, it's in identification. But as I look at this from a practical perspective, and I think we will all agree with this, that unity does precede the synthesis, and that he tells us interestingly, that synthesis is, he says, because it's related to pure being, and unity has to be created, probably through understanding, harmonization, analysis, all the different ways we do. And I would say that humanity is at the state now where the creation of unity is its next step. Some disciples are at the stage where the recognition of synthesis is possible to them, but that's an elusive word, and we have to really know what we're talking about and what level we're talking about, because the higher we go on the cosmic planes, the more intense the realization of synthesis. I don't see how it's possible that a human being, having achieved enlightenment, whatever, can say my enlightenment is the same as the enlightenment of a planetary or solar logos or a galactic logos or whatever. It intensifies the sense of this synthesis, and we go through unification, love unification, and this identification. These are the methods into the synthesis. Thank you for your thoughts, Rose. Okay, other questions or thoughts? Okay. This is deep stuff, no question about it. Occultism runs deep. Yes, and of course, I see some of you here, this is my moment for the Moria Federation moment. I see some of you who have applied and are joining the Moria Federation for a really deep plunge into the assimilation of the occultism which Master DK gave. And I would like to simply say that there's still time to do that and to join what I would anticipate to be, for most people, about a 7-year process as we're on our way to the conclave year of 2025. I know that our advanced program can be done in 5 years, and if you put together also the Great Quest program, which is esoteric psychology and the microcosm, along with the Quest Universal, then it will be 7 years. But I would like to say the opportunity is with us to dig in, and really, really assimilate this great teaching so that we are as prepared as possible for what Master DK will offer, according to his words, from 2025 and onward, probably impulsed by the great conclave. So the door is open. Just go to www.moriafederation.com and you'll see the applications, which we are still receiving. Very happy to receive them and work with you. We have a lot of experienced people. They've been in it a long time, and they are in position to give you a hand as you're working your way through the various levels. Hope to see you there. Okay, anything else before we get into our meditation? All right, maybe not. Okay, well, very happy to see you all here anyway, Very happy to see you here. And we just, we'll plow on and we'll do our best to keep going in a weekly manner. Now, sometimes that's not possible, and we'll let you know. And if I find myself over Greenland or the Atlantic Ocean when this is supposed to be happening, then I'll just let you know. Can't always guarantee complete stability in the schedule, but we'll let you know. Okay, now. Okay, we're going to, well, we have meditated on many things. Hatred, separativeness, the great heresy. We've meditated on fear. We've meditated on egoism. I think, all behind glamour is always limited vision, a misperception of things, as if the part is real and the whole is not real. But the whole has to be seen as one, and the part has to be seen as part of the many. So this may be a little peculiar, but I'm going to call it the glamour of imagining that the part is the whole. Now, there are egotists in the world. I guess we've all gone through those stages as we've been opening up the fifth petal of our egoic lotus. And we see on the world stage some really crazy behavior, by people for whom the part is the whole. In other words, the world revolves around them, and they see themselves as the center of everything. As it has been said, it's all about me. It's all about me. And that's the little me. So it's a very limited form of vision. But it's natural enough because we're so acquainted with this particular part, life after life. The elemental nature of the personality is very close to us, and when something happens, we feel it intensely in the body and the emotions, and lately in the mind. So we think it's who we are. So, this is really related to the glamour or illusion of mistaken identity. We somehow have to expand our ring past knot so that we can realize that this little part that we have identified with, wrong identification, just is a little aspect and not what we really are at all. So I'll kind of focus on these things a little bit, considering we've been reading about universality, which involves the expansion of the ring past knot, of course. And we'll meditate on the glamour of taking the part for the whole, or imagining that the part is somehow more important than the whole. If people could clear their consciousness of that terrible mistake, we would have a different world altogether. Okay, friends, so we'll get into it. So some 40 of us are gathered here. 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, which is the astral plane, really. And in the silence, we'll try to register the presence of each other. We take ourselves as an instrument for hierarchy in helping to clarify the great plane of illusion, the astral plane. So we will work with the protective formula, the cross that goes from the forehead to the chest to the eye, left eye, right eye. This work, well, we are susceptible more than we know. So we use that illuminated cross together and as a group to guard ourselves according to Master DK's instructions. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. The illuminated cross, the cross of divinity, he calls it. Let's stay with that for a minute. Which guards us and guards the group. And then we know that three lights are one. So first our focus is in the dual light of matter and mind. Well, it's all matter really on the cosmic physical plane, of course, but we're talking about the etheric physical nature and the lower mental nature. And we lift the vitality of the etheric physical nature up to the mind, lower mind. That light, all material demonstration is light. If it's visible, it's light. And two lights merge, the light of the reasoning mind and the vital light of the etheric physical nature. And on the lower mental plane, two lights are one. The vitalized light of mind. And then we meditate on soul contact and the recognition of soul light. This is a real form of light and more subtle, but it can be drawn down in relation to the two forms of light fused on the mental plane, and we do that. We imagine that we bring forth the soul light and fuse it with the light of mind and the light of matter. Three are one. This is going to be our searchlight. This triple light as one, searching, dissipating, destroying. And we will say together, the light is one, and in that light we shall see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. The light of day is the light of the intuition. It is a scorpionic type of light. It rules the Buddhic plane. It all has to work with the dissipation of glamour around the time of the second initiation. That's when a major attack on glamour is made. Now, we're going to use the formula. And as we do so, we will visualize our searchlight, individual and greater group searchlight, turned on, turning the light towards the astral plane, where these obstructions, veils, clouds, miasmas, and so forth, where they can be found. And so, we visualize the turning on of our light as we use the formula. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. The beam of our light is turned onto the astral plane. And we're going to strengthen it with spiritual will coming from high sources. Monad, Atma, the jewel in the lotus, sacrifice petals, so forth. Spiritual will, that willingness to do what the Spirit demands. First what the soul demands, then increasingly what the Father in heaven, that aspect of ourselves, what that Father in heaven demands. And so together with power, upon its beam. The light is focused on the goal. And we're focusing on that glamorous tendency to be attracted to the part, which we are, and not to the whole, which is. It's related, of course, to egotism and separation. These are all interrelated. But this little self, it's a necessary little thing, but we cannot make it more attractive, more important than relationship, than the group, than the whole, the one. And so realizing that particular type of magnetism which makes secondary things more important than primary, which makes the non-essential more important to us than the essential, which makes the part more important than the whole, we say these words of power. Using our imagination to dissipate and weaken this confining glamour, which is more interested and attracted to the little part than to the wholeness in which that part finds its place. And so we say, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of mistaking the part for the whole. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour of being more attracted to the part than the wholeness in which it lives. And so using our creative imagination, using these words of power, visualizing the light penetrating into this confining glamour and producing the weakening of this glamour which produces too small a ring pass knot for what we really are, we will have our 5 minutes of silence. This is the story of dissipating those forces which compel magnetically the attention on an artificially small ring pass knot. One day, every life in the universe will have the same all-encompassing ring pass knot of the universal logos. And for now, too much attraction, too much attention to the little self. DK advises, take your eyes off the little self. Too much of that kind of magnetic attention shuts out the wholeness and leads to distortion. You've all seen how the stick put in water appears to bend, the refraction. You've all seen the strange effects that occur when you're presented with those mirrors of unusual shape that distort the original image. We have to use the heart. And Jupiter's the ruler of the disciple's heart. Use the heart center to expand the ring pass knot until it begins to include others, include the group, include the nation, include humanity, eventually the planet and beyond and beyond. It's a heart center exercise to expand the ring pass knot and weaken those forces which try to hold our attention magnetically confined to a very circumscribed image. So we have to broaden out and practice on that. So let us now, as it were, take our beam, our strong beam, withdrawing it now back onto the mental plane. And this fusion of three lights, of soul, of mind, of matter, we temporarily turn off. Having done some work in clarifying and weakening the forces which distort our perception and render us attracted by things which are of lesser value. And we will sound the Om 3 times, affirming that our work has been useful on the mental, emotional, and physical planes. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Our Ask program is going to be resuming next week. Tuija, is there anything you want to say about that? We'll begin with our triangles work, I think, on Wednesday.
Yes, we start the normal schedule. Welcome to everybody.
Okay.
And we will try to send the for the coming several months the schedule, so very soon, in few days.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. We have in mind also, I don't know, there are so many possibilities, various kinds of broadcasts and webinars which can help get you deeper and deeper into the materials. So stay tuned, and we will offer our best to you to help with this task of assimilating all that is possible and applying all that is possible in these 7 years before the era of the Forerunner concludes. We've got a lot of work on our plate here, on our shoulders. And as Master Moria has said, burden me still more. Burden me still more as I enter the beautiful garden. So, get ready to carry the weight. That's what Aquarian types do, weightlifters, and we'll do our best to be ready for the Tibetan when he again comes forth to offer the third and final installment of the bridging treatises that he has promised to us on the way into the Aquarian age. Thanks, everybody, and Brett will have this up for you and on Makara, and here's what I suggest, that if you have friends and so forth that might benefit from thinking about these glamours and this book and so forth, recommend to them that they can go to Makara and use the link and participate with us. It's not a totally timed thing, so they can benefit from it when they are available. So please do your part in spreading the word of the teaching available. There will be people that I'm sure can benefit, and reach out and help to draw them towards the ashrams and the final ashram. Okay, we'll be seeing you soon. Lots of love and many blessings from Olivia, Tuija, and myself, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.